back. SpaceX is set to make history today as it launches NASA astronauts to space for the first time ever. Not only will it be the first time a private company has taken astronauts to the International Space Station, it will be the first human launch from U.S. soil since 2011. Folks are gearing up to watch the Falcon 9 rocket and Crew Dragon spacecraft launch from NASA's Kennedy Space Center in Florida at 4:30 p.m. Eastern Time today. Chairman and CEO of Voyager Space Holdings, Dylan Taylor, is here to tell us about the launch. Dylan, welcome to the show. We are all so excited about this. Fingers crossed it all goes well. We're all hoping. And this is the first crewed spacecraft launch happening in the U.S. in nearly a decade. What does this launch mean for space exploration and for the United States in general?
Yeah, well, for the U.S., it's obviously a national security concern that we've had to take a Russian rocket to the space station recently for the last 9 years, actually. But it's bigger than that, because really what this allows us to do is open up space, in particular human space flight, to commercial space. Heretofore, it's been nation state only. And so this is a huge milestone that we would have a private company flying astronauts to the space station.
Exciting milestone at that. Tell us a little bit about the passengers going to the ISS and what will happen on this mission while they're in space, Dylan.
Sure. So the two astronauts you have, Bob Behnke and Doug Hurley, two veteran NASA astronauts. They actually happen to be good friends, both incidentally married to astronauts. One of the advisors on the Voyager advisory board is actually married to Doug Hurley. Her name's Karen Nyberg, NASA astronaut. So it really is a family affair. These guys know each other really well, highly trained, highly skilled. And the reason they call this mission the Demo 2 is it still is in fact a demo mission. It just happens to be a demo mission with crewed astronauts testing the spacecraft in orbit. So that'll be the big thesis or theme for this mission, is to make sure the hardware works well.
Yeah, we were reading a little bit about Bob and Doug this morning. So interesting that they're friends and they're married to astronauts themselves, a family affair, like you said. Should we expect anything different today, Dylan? Is launching a rocket built by a private company any different from launching one built by NASA?
Well, the short answer is no, although, a little known fact, there have only been 5 orbital human-rated spacecraft ever tested by humans, ever. So in that respect, it's a very rare occurrence. But the hardware is qualified at a very, very high standard. So whether it's designed and manufactured by a private company or by a nation state contracting with a private company, it really is very similar. I would say that the Dragon capsule, and I think you've seen some of the imagery, it looks, at least for my money, much more futuristic than certainly the space shuttle did, or certainly the Soyuz, which was designed in the 60s. That's the Russian rocket. So I think, it, in my mind, opens up a new era for human spaceflight.
Certainly, that seems very promising. And this isn't the first time we've seen weather play a factor, but we are keeping an eye on Florida weather being the main issue today. What happens if the spacecraft can't take off at 4:30 this afternoon?
Well, they'll scrub the launch. And in particular, what they're worried about is the downrange weather, because heaven forbid, if there were a rescue operation or the astronauts had to eject, you need to clear the entire downrange weather and make sure that that's good for a rescue. But their pushback is for Saturday, mid-afternoon Eastern time, and then the pushback behind that would be Sunday. So either May 30th or May 31st.
And like we mentioned before, this is the Crew Dragon capsule's final demonstration before NASA certifies SpaceX to make regular flights into space. So what kind of benchmarks will NASA be looking for today if it does take off?
Well, I think there's the mission, and then there's maybe style points, right? The mission is, of course, successful launch to orbit, get the spacecraft in orbit, and then ultimately be able to maneuver the spacecraft. It's obviously much more challenging than just deploying a satellite. You actually have to rendezvous with the space station that's going, in excess of 17,000 miles an hour in orbit. It's a very, high level of precision that you need to synchronize to. So obviously docking would be the next milestone. And then last but not least is a successful return of the capsule with the astronauts on board ultimately. And then in terms of style points, obviously SpaceX is famous for relanding their booster rockets that would be great if they'd be able to pull that off. But that's again, that's not critical to the mission.
And if this test is successful, do you expect more private companies to be approved for regular space travel in the future, Dylan?
I do. I do. I think we're right on the cusp of really opening up the frontier, the high frontier, as we say, to commercial space and private space companies. There are still some naysayers that think this should be the purview of governments and nation states only. But I think demonstrating the capability that hopefully we demonstrate today with SpaceX, I think will continue to add momentum to that tidal wave, really, of commercial spaceflight travel down the road.
Well, like we've been talking about today, certainly an exciting day. We're all looking forward to it. Thank you so much for being on, Dylan Taylor, Chairman and CEO of Voyager Space Holdings. Thank you, sir.